this.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Grant Cameron, and I want to thank you for taking time from your valuable schedule to be with me, to listen to me rant. But today it's going to be a little bit different. We got a super guest on. I have said I had my awakening. I've been at this for 50 years. In 2012, I had a consciousness awakening that came as a knowing. I knew this was how it worked. It came during a lecture when Colin Andrews was giving a lecture, and it suddenly the light came on, and I dumped all the presidential stuff, all the UFO stuff, and I went to consciousness. And I've said for many years that the UFO field is very much in the Rodney Dangerfield era, where they're still trying to prove to the skeptics who have their crown chakra stuck up their root chakra that this thing is for real. And I've said until we get into consciousness, we aren't going to move. We're like on the 10-yard line of a football game. We can't move. We're fumbling the ball. We're missing. And in the last year, there's been two major developments that are major plays where the ball has moved down the field. And I can now confidently predict that we are on the verge of solving how reality works and moving towards it. And it's got to do with consciousness. And my guest today is Hakim Isler, who ran the PSI games this year. And he'll explain what this is. This was one of the big plays. This is one of the things that really moved things along. And the other one, of course, was the telepathy tapes, which a year ago nobody even knew what it was. And now you can go anywhere in the world and people basically know what this is. We have made great progress, and a lot of people have stopped chasing the lights in the sky and have gone to try to talk to the people who have had the encounters, who have had the knowings, and trace this whole aspect of consciousness, which I was told in 2012 is what this is all about. So, Hakim, welcome, and I want to welcome my co-host on this is Cindy Vole, who has been very helpful and is setting up a lot of interviews for me. She's like the ever-ready bunny in terms of ufology. She's got lots of energy and a great willingness to try to solve this thing. So welcome, Cindy, and welcome, Hakim.
Hi.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much, both of you. I appreciate it.
Beautiful. As I said before we started, this is an honor. I mean, I heard about this, and you're good friends with my friend Rob Freeman. We've been doing interviews for years about this stuff, that this vision without eyes that he's been working
Mhm.
on. And it's almost like the time was right, and suddenly the ball moved, and he suddenly people started to pick it up, and he picked up this one girl who you can maybe talk about, this Dahlia, who they on the team they call her the Dalai Lama. She is absolutely unbelievable. I've done a couple of interviews with her, and I've tested her, and she looked through four blindfolds at the same time. And this kind of stuff is what people go wow at, but this is an indication that we are on the right track, that we're actually making some move. So, Hakeem, I want to talk to you about three things I mentioned before, and I want to talk to you first about the field that I've sort of in, sort of not in. I've written a lot of books about it, and that is the UFO field. And the whole idea in the UFO field, everybody's fighting, everybody's accusing other people of being working for the government, and this whole idea. My thing is always when the whistleblowers come forward, I say, how is it possible that some guy can take the most highly classified secret in the United States and go running out there and tell people about it? It just doesn't make any sense to me. It's almost like you've got the atomic bomb. I'm going to tell you where the bombs are and stuff like that. And it never made any sense to me. And so people will say, this is just a big psyop. I mean, this is the government's playing with us, and everybody's accusing everybody else of being on disinformation people. And you've got a background in this, so I wanted to sort of ask you to sort of talk about how good the government is at this, what a psyop is. And my basic question to you is, when you look at the UFO field, is there any indications when you see what's going on and you say, oh, I know what's going on here? Because for me, I'm a civilian. I'm on the street. I've come from Canada, and I'm looking at it, and I can't make heads or tails of who's telling the truth, what's going on. And you've got some background that you can sort of sort this out. So tell us what a psyop is, and how this actually operates.
Yeah, that's it's a lot in what you just said, and I appreciate the opportunity to talk about it. One of the things I would start with is that when I was in PSYOP, we always believed, and I still believe to this day, that if you do your job correctly and if you do it well, then it's going to be hard for anyone to figure out. And the reason being is because there are four different ways to come at a PSYOP when you start to develop one. And that is to first start with um, this thing. So you have this objective, and you say, well, what when people look at our objective, what do you want them to see? And so you start with that. Then you move on to what's the opposite thing that they could see if they were to look at our objective. Then you write that on the board, or you collect that information. What's a combination between what you want them to see and what's the opposite? You write that down. And then what's the thing that's totally outside of the realm of what the average person would think, maybe the conspiracy theorists. So those are your starting points. And if you start from there, then what you end up doing is you build a psyop that incorporates all of the different perspectives. And so it makes it very difficult for a person to come from either I see exactly what it is, I see the opposite of what it is, I see a combination, or I see something totally outside of the realm, because that's what you're starting from when you start to develop. So it makes it very difficult for the average person to break through. And that's one of the challenges. Now, one of the things that I also see, though, is that I see that PSYOP is in the things that I've seen have gotten lazy, where they're not really, like this, what was it? The New York Times or the Wall Street Journal wrote an article, and that was just so like ridiculous. And you were just like, okay, this is very clearly, they didn't really do any real homework here, and try to manipulate very strongly the people. And so you see that happening as well. And I just like to tell people that if it's done well, it's very difficult, because a PSYOP team, that's all they do all day long, all week long,
Yeah.
8, 10 hours a day. It's multiple people, multiple brains looking at the same issue, trying to create this and develop these PSYACs, which lead to a PSYOP. And most people don't know about the PSYACs, but there are actions that are taken and designed to create an overall PSYOP, right? So there's different things that you do, different actions you take or create that will lead to the PSYOP itself. And so you're looking at PSYACs first, and then how they develop the PSYOP. And so I would like to just say for people that they have to really hold on to the fact that sometimes the easiest people to sway are the people who truly believe that they know the answer. And so always keep your mind open, and always be looking for the possibilities. And that's going to stay flexible, and that's going to help you more than anything else. The other thing that I would love to say about what you just said is I want to bring it back to my high school years. I had a girlfriend who was blatantly cheating on me, to everyone else around us. And but when I would ask her, she would say, "No, I'm not cheating on you," and I would believe that. And so what you end up coming to is a point where it's like, why do I keep looking for her to say it when all of the evidence around me screaming that the truth is the truth? The people around me are like, "Hey, dude, I saw her at the bowling alley and she was with this guy."
Yeah.
And back then they didn't have cell phones, so it wasn't like a lot of photos or
Yeah.
anything, unless you got one of those old,
Yeah.
Polaroid cameras. So it's like, oh my gosh. And so it's like we're facing that same thing now. That's the only reason I brought that up. I just thought it was a funny way to bring about the same understanding, is that we're sitting here and we have so much evidence, and we're just waiting for the government to say, "Oh yeah, that's right. You're right." And I think that's the wrong way to go. That is the distraction. The distraction is waiting for somebody to come and tell us what we already know. We have enough evidence, enough people have come out, the David Grushes, everybody else is like, "Hey, this stuff is happening." Jacques Vallée has written books about it yourself. You've been talking about it forever.
Yeah.
I mean, and still people want to have these debates about whether or not these guys are psyoping us. Yes, they've been psyoping us from the beginning. Yes, part of you waiting and spending all of your resources and time waiting for these people to come forward and tell you what we already know is a part of the psyop, because it's keeping you distracted from the work that you need to be doing to better mankind, to prepare us for an age in which we can unify with whatever that is. So
So,
anyway,
so let
I'm
me ask you another question related to that. The UFO has always been sort of identified as the most highly classified secret. It'd be safe to say that the higher the classification, the more programs there are to hide it and to distract people?
I think so. I believe so. I believe that there's that, and then sometimes hiding it in plain sight,
Yeah.
is also a methodology that comes from even my understanding with my ninjutsu martial arts background. Is that sometimes the easiest way to hide something is to just put it out there, you know. And I find it very interesting that now you have these individuals coming forward and they're talking more openly about it, but then there's a small group of other individuals who are coming out and trying to prove those people are invalid or whatever. And I see all of that as could be potentially part of the script, you know.
Yeah, and you sort of get bogged down and you worked internationally, but I remember you in an interview you talked about this idea because I remember back in 1991, a guy I've followed for decades, this Ron Pandolfi guy at the CIA. He went to a friend of his, Dan Smith, and he said, I'm going to Los Alamos to talk to the aliens, and he went, what? And he posted this thing, and he went to the Inspector General at the CIA. He filed a complaint, and apparently they spent $100,000 investigating this thing. Like, if you're in the CIA, why are you talking about UFOs to an American citizen?
Hmm.
And apparently they did this $100,000 investigation and came out and said, whatever Ron's doing, that's his job. And so the question has always been, how can you, it's illegal to run counterintelligence against the US population, and yet it's apparent that they are doing this. So talk to me about how this is done.
Yeah, so when I part of our oath when we go into PSYOP in the Army, the U.S. Army, is to, we persuade, change, and influence the hearts and minds of a foreign target audience. We're not supposed to use it here. Now, there are certain conditions where PSYOP can be used, or when we use PSYOP in a capacity domestically, we call it information operations. So, for instance, Hurricane Katrina, when that took place, you had PSYOP people on the ground who were out there spreading information, doing things of that nature, and they called them information operations, and not PSYOP. So if you talk to somebody on the ground, even though their designator, if you were to look at their DD 214, it would say 37 Fox, which is the nomenclature for, or the identifier for PSYOP. They would say, "Oh no, we are information operations," right? And then we so cleverly in the military decided that we were going to change our name because PSYOP always had this like kind of weird connotation with it. When you would go and talk to people overseas, they would be like, "Oh man, I don't want to give this guy, I don't want to talk to this guy. They're already on guard." So we started trying to change it to like military information operations specialist, like this MISO, or specialty operations. And so we went through these name changes to try to cover it up. But here's the thing. So you take this oath, but then you get out and you are a civilian and you say, "Well, I have this skill. What am I going to do with it?" And you find a job in a marketing company or a political strategist, or or one of these branches, and then yeah, I'm not using PSYOP because I'm no longer in the military capacity, but I'm using those techniques and skills in this other job because that's all I know how to do. And so, yeah, you're still using PSYOP. It's just a matter of play on words and how people, get around the things. I mean, and if you go even deeper back, Bernays, who was a marketing genius, lived up until maybe like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Robert Bernays, he actually helped develop PSYOP for the Army. And so he was a marketer, a public marketer. He's behind like Lucky Cigarettes, the green, and getting that popular. The reason we eat bacon with meal breakfast. He's done so many different campaigns over the years. But then they hired him as a person to come in and help them develop, the Army develop the PSYOP program. And so, what did he do? He didn't create all new stuff. He just took the same stuff he had been doing to the American population and put it in a curriculum for the Army. And so, you see a lot of, so there's all this overlap. So if I was to talk to a marketing person, chances are we're going to have a lot of and I have, we're going to have a lot of similarities in our language and how we see things when it comes down to marketing or influence, and so that's where that bridge happens, is that many people think of it as a separate thing, but it's just a tactical version of,
Exactly.
marketing,
Exactly.
and so, and I was tactical psyop, which actually specifically is the tactical version of psyop. So there's like regional psyop where you work in an embassy, and there's tactical psyop. And I would actually be in the field, boots on ground with people as, we were doing searches or, information campaigns and things of that nature. So,
Wow. And you've got a magic background as well. So the question would be, how easy is it for people to be fooled in terms of the people? Because I've
oh,
always warned people. I said, I know what the figure is. You hear Eric Davis talk about the fact that the stuff to control, the money that's spent to control and protect a black program is 10 times the money of the program. And some people say it's 2 to 3 times, but they spend a lot of money on, say, counterintelligence or psyops to protect this. And I tell people they've done this since World War II. They know what they're doing. And people are running around acting as if there is no such program, that everybody's just sort of there and they don't realize that there's this massive organization there to protect the program.
yeah. So I just this correction, I am not a magician. I have no magic background,
Oh, I thought you had a magic
although
background as
my
well.
friend Chris Ramsey is
Yeah.
legit. He's the man. He's the guy. But I I mean, some of those, when Chris and I talk, many of the things that he does is similar to what we do in PSYOP as well. And so the money spent for PSYOP is to get people off the path of the truth is really spent on counterintelligence agencies, because they are the ones who have these people who think on these deeper levels. Truth be told, if we were to say the average American or foreign citizen, they're not thinking deep enough on to be able to deal with this. So you don't spend a lot of money in that realm. You spend a lot of money on hiding it from other or other intelligence agencies, because those are the cream of the crop. Those are the people who are using vast resources to try to get your information and understand what's going on. But the average American is very easy to fool, right? You just have to figure out what their bias is, and you have to wrap everything in their understanding of their bias. And so in PSYOP, we started with the Maslow's hierarchy of needs. So that bottom, like you talked about, that root chakra, that base of the Maslow's hierarchy needs is all about, survival. So it's all about the food, water, shelter. And then you get that, and then you move up to like safety and security. And then you get that, and you move up to recognition and esteem. And you just keep going up the ladder. And each one of us as an individual fall into one of those categories as to what our greatest need is. And so once you identify what people are looking for and what need they have, you just wrap everything in that. And then that's what makes it so insidious, is that if you find a person's truth and you wrap everything in that truth, and they just eat it up, and that makes it really easy. Whereas the intelligence agents and PSYOP, when I was in, we were told, hey, keep reevaluating yourself. Know that you have a hook. So we all identify that we have a hook, something that somebody can say or do that's going to make us start to want to believe them. Identify that first, recognize the signs of when you're getting hooked, and then start to and keep reevaluating yourself, because at any moment in time your programming could kick in, and then you find yourself hooked, and not re-examining, oh man, I'm hooked right now. So those intelligence agents and people who work in those departments, they're all taught and trained to keep re-examining and do all that stuff. And even so, we still get caught. So the average American's not doing that, or the average citizen in whatever country is not doing that. So they're a lot more easier to sway. They have jobs and other things. And
Right.
so they just have sound bites. And so how do you wrap the sound bite in their truth? And then as long as you can wrap the sound bite in their truth, then they're gonna grab a hold of it. And if you want to make it even more sticky, then what you would do is you would create it in such a way that you're not feeding them that truth, but they come to the conclusion of that truth on their own. And that way they will defend it until the end because you'll say, oh, that's not true. And they'll say, well, I did the research. And, not knowing that that research is created for them. When I speak on PSYOP, I've been saying I was going to do this for a matter of years, but with Fiverr and Freelancer, I can develop a website and subsequent links on that website and people who look professional for like $400 and have it go multiple layers deep, right? Have it pretend to cite things from the NIH, or the NIH, so have this idea like, oh, this paper was referenced for this, and then give a little blurb of maybe the piece of that paper or that research that actually kind of sounds like it supports what I'm doing, and have that link to something else and then something else, and pay a bunch of people $400 on Fiverr and Freelancer total, and get like a crazy in-depth site, start pointing people to that site, and then they do the research from that site, and then they just find all of the things, and by the time they get done with their 30 minutes to actually spend time looking at this, they're a true believer, and then they're going to start advocating and sending other people to that site. And now you have a whole army of people who believe something that you just created on the fly on using Fiverr and Freelancer. And that's why people have to keep looking and keep researching if they want the data. But for me personally, just to kind of move into a new direction, I'm past all of that crap. Like I'm like, okay, it's there, PSYOP's there, it's really difficult, but what can I do to move the needle? And what I can do is I can help people explore the deeper regions of their consciousness so then they themselves can start to connect and and not have to rely on, what Lou Elizondo is going to tell us about UAPs, and so
Right.
and when is he gonna be able to share the one photo that's gonna do it for everybody? Like I don't care about that. Like if we're saying that NHI are out there and they're communicating and contacting man on a regular basis, average people, then maybe there's a way that we can dial up that line and see, how we can connect. And so, but we have to do that in a safe way too, because we're dealing with forces and things that we're not 100% understanding, and there seems to be multiple entities and multiple things out there, so we have to be careful because some of them may be malevolent and some of them may be benevolent, and we just don't know. And so anyway, I'm off on a tangent, sorry
Yeah,
about
no, that's good. Hey, Cindy, you got anything? I got one more question, but you got anything to jump in here?
So I wanted to understand more about the your conference in early August, the
that.
PSI. That's fascinating. By the time I've been traveling every single month. So by the time I got my schedule all set, I went back to see if I can get in. It was sold out.
Yeah, yeah,
Wait,
yeah. So go ahead, I'm sorry, Grant.
no, which is a big move we people say, we're not getting anywhere, but in the consciousness field, you had the telepathy tapes on Christmas Day was the biggest podcast in the world, and you sold out all the tickets for your event. So tell us about this event, and this is fascinating stuff that I think is one of the big plays that has moved the ball down the field. So go ahead.
Yeah, so the side games came as a download to me, and one of the things that finally solidified it for me was I was listening to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp on their podcast, and they had this guy from the DIA there, and he wrote this book called Skinwalkers at the Pentagon. This gentleman was talking about these UAPs and things of that nature, and Jeremy or George, yeah, it was Jeremy. He chimes in and he says, hey, this stuff just sounds like scary. Isn't this freaking people out? And the guy was like, I don't see any danger here based on our research. And he said, a matter of fact, all I'll say, and he prefaces that he can only say but so much. And whether that was for effect or whether that was real, I don't know. But he says, all I can say is that if human beings can operate at their full potential, they wouldn't have anything to be afraid of. And that was the final straw, and me debating on whether or not I should do this side games thing because it was so massive when it came to me. I was like, I don't have the connections, the money, the know-how. Like I can't do this. And so I avoided it, and it kept coming up through these synchronicities, but that was the final thing. And I started to say, okay, well, how do I do this? And once I said yes, it was magic. Every piece of the puzzle, every one I needed, the money I needed, everything just started coming into my sphere and making itself possible. And so really the side games birthed itself. And what I started to recognize as I personally, I've trained in remote viewing with all of the remote viewers, Paul Smith, all of the original military guys that are still around, still doing it, except for maybe one or two. Paul Smith, Tom McNair, Bill Ray, Lynn Buchanan, Joe McMonagle. I've trained with all those guys. Then I did Mindsight with Rob Freeman, Wendy Gallant, the Vibravision guys, Moss, Mike, and Nate, and ICU Academy, Nicola Pharma. And so I've done all this training, and I'm an advisory board member for the Monroe Institute. So I've been everywhere and involved in all these things. And so I was like, how do we get all these people together in one place? And then also, there's still so many people who don't even know about this. And then they think it's a hoax or they think it's fake, and they're not doing the homework and actually looking at the research, and that we have 150 or more years worth of research that backs up these abilities. And the average person, is not real to them in their life, and nobody's and the scientists, when I started talking to them, like, hey, what are you doing to bring this? Oh, we're doing more peer-reviewed papers. They'll be out next week. I'm like, oh, okay, okay. And I talked to a new scientist. What are you doing? Oh, I got a peer-reviewed paper that comes out next week. And I'm like, yeah, we have 150 years of peer-reviewed papers, and still the average citizen thinks that all of this is a joke because they don't know that it's real and they don't have information that supports it. And then I started thinking from a psyop perspective, and I said, you have to make this real to people. You have to inspire people. You have to show people that it can be done, that average people can do it, that average people are doing it, that you can do it too. And then you have to inspire them to that next level and empower them to that next level in a collaborative way. And so the side games is really what that is. It brings it to the world stage. And that's what we heard after the event, was so many people said this was the greatest event that they've been to, because you had the learning, the lectures. So we start on Friday with lectures and workshops. So we have all these people teach you what remote viewing is, talk about the history of remote viewing, teach you what dowsing, what mindsight, what psychokinesis, all that. Then on Saturday, we have these fun games that are, competitive, friendly competitive, not negative competitive, where we have these challenges where people have to wear a blindfold and they have to sort colors, or they have to try to move things with their mind, and they have to, and the whole world gets to see that. We had over 600 people at the side games for the first one, and it's this whole packed room of people seeing these things in action. And a lot of people hadn't seen that before. They saw it on YouTube, or they read about it, or they saw a show on television. That's still not real to them, because they're just watching that experience that was recorded some other time. They're not living in the energy and the moment of that experience, and that's what people need. And so, and they do this on a grand scale, and that's what we see now. Is only a few weeks after this event, people are posting online, they're building teams, they're training at home, they're practicing for next year, like, I'm going to get my kid to do it, like it's a huge thing. And speaking of children, that's the second part of this. We're all older folks, we have children, we've done stuff, we've been around for a while. What about the kids? When you go to these conferences, it's very rarely any children there.
Yeah.
And so then you say to yourself, well, we're growing in a world where children are starting to value tech technology more than they value divine and human technology. Then that's where the future is for those individuals. And then we say that we want them to really understand and embody and love their divine technology, but we don't have a stage or a place for them to actually go to explore that in a safe, collaborative community that supports them, not shuts them down, not tells them they're weird for having an imaginary friend, or you've been imagining too long. Now it's time to get with real world, real adult stuff. and really support them in their intuitive awakening, and then have them grow in that. If we can do that now through like vehicles like the side games, through the awakening that happened with the telepathy tapes, then what we'll have is we'll have that generation grow up. And when they become 20, 30 and have children, they will say, oh, you're having that experience. I did too. And there's a place that we can go, or people that we can go and talk to that can help us guide you with some good quality mentorship. And that's how we can change the paradigm within a generation if we had something like that. And so the side games is not only for adults, it's for children too. We had a whole kids play area that the kids got to do mind sight. I actually sat in there and watched kids go from I've never done this before to seeing almost 100% accuracy through their blindfold, to see them bend forks and bend spoons and do things that, adults, we have sometimes challenges. We're like, oh, this thing is so hard to bend this spoon. They're just picking it up like, oh, I saw that kid do it, then I can do it, you know? And they're going through these phases. So how do we're changing that paradigm. We're making it real for people. Science is good, research is good, but until you make it real for the people, then you're just another small group of people trying to get your word out there, but it's not real to anybody. And you want to see change, but you're not really changing the people. The people is where the change happens, not what you do in a laboratory. And so if we can connect the two, the laboratory, the research, the science, to the emotional connection of the people, then we start to see real change. And that's what we're trying to do with the side game.
Wow. It came to you as a download. Can you talk about, you probably know the concept of belief versus knowing. And
Mm.
that's the hardest thing I tried to explain to people when I had my experience is, just don't question me. I know this is real. I know this is the answer. And in science, basically what you have in science is you have belief. They work on a hypothesis, they go through the observation, they make a conclusion, then they make like another guess. Oh no, it's not this. Now it looks like it's this. And they do another thing, and they're always guessing as how things work, and it keeps
Hmm.
changing. Whereas when you have yours, I think you described this, you were on a bus or a plane or something, and it suddenly it came to you, and that's hard to explain. Have you tried to explain this to people, this concept of knowing that there's a field where once you get material, you know for a fact that this is real?
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because I'm a Gemini, right? So there's two of me in here somewhere. So I'm trying to narrow it down to one, Grant, but it's not working. Um, Yeah, so me having this PSYOP background, I actually, I did go through that struggle where I had something that I knew was absolutely 100% real to all of my being, but then my logic was
Yeah,
like,
the
nah,
left
bro,
brain
you
comes
got it.
in.
Yeah. My left brain came in and was like, wait a minute, you're a PSYOP guy. You got to be objective about this. You have to be objective about your subjective experience. That's how we're trained, right? And so then I'm like trying to be objective and I'm like, well, maybe I was thinking, this way, or maybe this thing happened. And so it took me a while to really get past that. And it was those synchronicities. And this is where I tell people, this is where the side games and my path was born, but it really did birth itself. I watched my partner give birth to our child, and it was like, okay, once she was coming. Like you couldn't stop it. Like, it's like the water broke, okay, it's coming,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
you could try to disbelieve or, come up with all reasons why it shouldn't happen right now, but she's on her way, and
Yeah.
so that was how the side games happened, is that I tried to rationalize and get around it. And, it came. And then once I finally came back to the understanding that no, that's because I knew this was real. I knew what was going to happen. It came to me very clearly. And it spoke to me, and then it continued to speak to me because I was going through that disbelief period. And I would say for people listening that that's one of the greatest lessons that I had. And maybe not all the time it comes that way where you get a knowing and then you deny it. Sometimes maybe it goes away and goes someone else. But for me, that wasn't the experience. It didn't go away. it came to me and it kept going. And this is the reason I say that is because I have talked to people who are like, man, I had this idea about the side games like 10, 15, 20 years ago, and
Yeah.
it came to me and I knew, and
I
I was
had it.
like,
Yeah.
I'm ready to go, but the pieces didn't happen for them. They got sidetracked with other things in life or whatever. But for me, I didn't have a choice. I knew it. I tried to debate against it, but it was like, nah, bro, you're it. And I'm not, we're not going to anyone else. You have to do it now. And I'm sure there's been plenty of other people with different experiences similar to that, but around different things where, it'll just come to you. So there is that belief, hey, I believe it. But again, you can always wrestle back and forth with, maybe the logic side of your mind. And then there's that intuitive knowing
Yeah.
where you could try to pretend like it's not happening or you don't know it, but you just know the truth is there. Um, and so, maybe sometimes this would be a good example to bring up, like, when people have tragedy strike their lives and they know, oh, somebody close to me is in danger or somebody close to me has gotten hurt, and they try to then rationalize why that might not be true, and only to find out later that indeed it was the case. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, that might make it a little bit more real for people to take it from that perspective.
Do you think in terms of the synchronicities, which I've experienced as well, do you think that the intelligence, whatever we're dealing with here, is running an operation where they're sort of they drop this in your path, they drop this in your path, whether it's your higher self or whether it's some outside influence. It appears that without the synchronicities, you may have gone the other way, but it's sort of like they drop another thing and it sort of gets you back on the path again. Do you think they're running an op that a lot of times I see that they're running an operation, that they've got this all planned, they've done this on 1,000 different planets, and they know exactly what to do next, and they're trying to get you to come to the conclusion rather than them landing on the White House lawn and giving us a left brain lecture.
Yeah, I definitely think if I was to be true to my training in the past, like I definitely believe that that could be a possibility.
Yeah.
And I've thought about that as a possibility. I've actually, through my Monroe experiences with Gateway, I had an encounter with an entity that was just like, "Hey, this is what you're gonna do, and this is who you're gonna be." And I was like, I don't know about that, you know. And so, um, and now I see how those things that were told to me can start to become a reality based on where I am now and the things that are happening to me now with the side games. And now I'm like, oh, okay, if I play this out down the line, I'll likely be exactly where this thing was telling me that I'm going to be. So I definitely feel like there could be some of that. And then there's other, I wrestle with some other possibilities too, which is maybe we as these spiritual beings that may have been here before have, this collective mission to raise us up to a new level of awareness. If we have been here before and we have been technologically advanced before in the past, maybe we're coming back to get that information out again. And so as we start to develop, we have this. And I'll be willing to share that my experience with that was when I was on ICU Academy and I did this event, this training event with these guys. There was a lady there. She was from Germany. I'd never met this lady before, and it was time for us to leave. We had finished and completed our training, and Nicola asked if anybody had anything to say, and this lady was like, "Oh yeah, I have something to say." And so we're all listening in. It's only a few of us, and this lady says, "I have something to say to Hakim," and so now my ears are all perked up. I've never met this lady before a few days ago on this Zoom. Um, and so she was like, I don't want to sound crazy and I wouldn't normally say this, but we've met before in another life. You trained me and you were an ascended master and you taught me all of this stuff and you told me I was to go out into the world and help people and grow people. But then before I could do it, I was murdered. I was killed. And so you came to my funeral or my grave and you told me that we'd meet again and that that I would then fulfill my duty in this next life. And she says, I just had to tell you that I'm doing that today, like the
Wow.
lessons that you gave me. And she said, I normally would not say this because I understand how crazy it can sound. She said, and I was going to get off the phone without saying anything, the Zoom without saying anything. But I realized that you had not recognized who you were yet. So, so she was reminding me of who I
Wow.
was. She saw that I didn't know who I was in that particular moment. So I'm still a psyop guy at heart, so I'm like, okay. So we all cried. Let me put that out there.
Yeah, yeah,
I was crying. I was, huffing and puffing, crying like a baby because it was really, I was going through some things, trying to figure out, what all this meant for me. And then she says that, and it was like all wrapped it up. But I got off of that, and then I started to pull back, like, okay, I got to be objective about my subjective
yeah,
experience. Let me
yeah.
think about this now. A week later, I did a what they call a palm leaf reading with some guys in India. And they go through, they find my palm leaf. Now, whatever people may believe about that,
Yeah.
it leads me to this one point. So as they're talking to me, they say, oh, it looks like you've been here before. We believe you have 7 lives, and you in your 6th life, you actually ascended. You were an ascended master. So now my ears are perking up, right? Because this is exactly what this lady just told me only a few days earlier.
Yeah.
And they were like, but we don't know why you came back. You had already ascended, so you chose to come back this time. And they said, okay, but no worries, you'll ascend again this time, and this will probably be your last time on this in this dimension. And I was just like, okay. Either there is a massive psyop going on, just the full little old me, or I have to pay attention now, I have to recognize that there's something deeper going on here. That I need to be aware of, and that's why these messages are coming to me for me to grasp that, not to change me, which has been my biggest fear with all of that. I had to talk to my yogic instructor and we were at an ashram in Austin, Texas, and I sat down and got some counsel from him because I was just like, you know, is it telling me this because I'm too wrapped up in my ego or whatever and blah blah blah, and am I going to become a bad person because I know all this? And he talked me off of that ledge and gave me some really great advice. But yeah, so going back to your story, there could be belief and knowing, and there's a lot of different avenues that a person can take to get there. My experience is when you know, and when it's time, when it's time for the things that you know to come into fruition, you'll have a hard time stopping them.
Yeah.
They will, when it's for you. As my teacher said in this, as he was giving me guidance, he said, when it's ordained, it's ordained. It's nothing you can do to stop it or change it. It is going to happen. That's none of your business. Your business is to just continue doing what you're doing and do it to the best you can. And I was like, okay, so that's what I've been doing since.
Beautiful. Can you go through the five different things that were at the Psy Games and explain who won and that sort of thing?
Yeah, yeah. So we had 5 different categories, disciplines, and the reason I chose those disciplines is because I knew nothing like this had been done before, and I also had been in these circles training with all of these people who are very proficient and they were very research based, and so I wanted to use something that had a lot of research behind it. I also wanted to use things that people have been doing for a long, long time. I also found in my own travels, talking to people, that many of these different disciplines kind of meld together and it's hard to separate them, although science tries to. They try to say, like basketball, how do you separate dribbling the ball from shooting the ball from like playing the game? Like it's all part of the game, and then there's these different pieces, but they all kind of tie into each other.
Yeah.
And so when you talk to remote viewers, they will say sometimes they have a remote viewing is about, or let me first explain the 5 categories. The 5 categories are remote viewing, mind sight, precognition, dowsing, and then the last one is psychokinesis,
Okay.
telekinesis. And so when you talk to people in these different realms, they have experiences that are similar to the way we define the other ones. So if you talk to a remote viewer, that's supposed to be bilocation. So that means that my consciousness is both here and there, wherever the place is that I'm looking at or getting information, perceptions, because you're not really looking, that would be clairvoyance. So you're getting perceptions from this place, and your consciousness is located at both. But then there's times that you can be locally perceiving something and it's not remote at all. It's very local. And in those instances, it becomes very much like mind sight in your earliest stages before you're actually seeing through the mask. You perceive things about your location or where you're at. And you're like, oh, okay, I just know that's a ace of hearts, that club that card that you're holding in your hand. I can't see it, I just know, right? The same way you feel or you know this target or this location when you're doing remote viewing. And sometimes you'll go back and forth between those. The same thing with precognition. A lot of people say, well, you know, Ed May, one of the famous researchers from the Stargate program, he will talk about that a lot of it, and Joe McMonagle will say this too. A lot of remote viewing is precognitive, right? Especially if you get feedback. Now we know that there is a good barrier between precognitive remote viewing and regular remote viewing. I don't want to say a barrier, but there's a difference. And that is because Pat Price, who is a famous remote viewer, remote viewed several things that he never got feedback on before he died. And so therefore it couldn't have been precognitive. It was, unless there's something else that people discover about precognition, he never got feedback on that. But for remote viewers who 10, even 20, 30, 40 years down the line get feedback, then they could have been remote viewing their feedback and not actually the target itself as it stood that particular day. So then you have precognition. Then you have psychokinesis. Now, psychokinesis is your ability to interact with energy on multiple different levels. Telekinesis is a subset of psychokinesis in which you can actually influence matter itself, by movement or something of that nature through a conscious means. And so, but healing, if I'm using healing modalities like Reiki, by definition, that's psychokinesis. Now, if I'm using that same type of energy like chi to move or push a person or push this object over, then that then becomes telekinesis, but it's still there. So what does that have to do? That has to do with directing your consciousness, directing your energy, which is a lot like remote viewing to some extent. I'm not using it to heal this person, but I'm using it to connect with something that's outside of what I know as myself through this modality, through this means of consciousness. And so that's there. Dowsing is the same thing. So dowsing and remote viewing are two sides of the same coin, right? So in remote viewing, I have this tasking number and I don't know what I'm looking for, but I know it's out there and I know I can connect to it through this tasking number. With dowsing, I know what I'm looking for. I just don't know where it is. So the other one, I don't know what I'm looking for, right? And so I have some idea that it's out in the world. And the other one, I do know what I'm looking for. I just don't know what it is. And that's more of a local perception, whereas remote viewing is a non-local perception. And so those are our modalities. So I think I hit all of them: mind sight, remote viewing, precognition. Yeah. And so my goal was to get that if you're training in one, you're probably more likely to have an easy go at another one. Right. And that was the key. And I have a way that I explain consciousness in these modalities in a very the easiest way that I found to explain it, very easy to understand, which is I think of consciousness as the ocean, and that's not unique. Other people have thought of that too. And I think that just as if you were to go to the beach right now, there are various means that people engage with the ocean. So you have the surfer and the jet ski person and the paddleboard person and the deep sea diver. And so when you're out on this ocean of consciousness, and you're using one of these modalities, one of those things is like one of these modalities we're talking about. So the remote viewer is the paddleboard guy, right?
Mhm.
And the mind sight person is the jet ski person. You know, they're still on the ocean, but their experiences are a little different,
Yeah.
right? But there are certain things that you need to know in order to be able to do those things that cross. Like if I'm paddleboarding or jet skiing or surfboarding or diving, I better have some understanding of how to hold my breath and how to swim and how to float for a little bit of time.
Yeah.
So there's those actual skills that cross over for the bigger skill of whatever it is that you're doing. So if I'm remote viewing or mind sight, I better be able to kind of understand my conscious awareness and how to direct it and how to focus my intention and all that stuff. So all those skill sets carry over to these greater skills of whatever they are. And then there are different levels of engaging with the ocean. And so a deep sea diver has a very different experience than a paddleboarder.
Mhm.
You know, paddleboarders having a great experience up there paddling,
Yeah.
sees the ocean from the top. But that deep sea diver is like getting the cream of the crop. They're seeing like the fish and stuff.
Yeah.
And then if we talk about NHI in that equation, the NHI are like the whales, the dolphins, the
Yeah.
jellyfish. And so if you're a paddleboarder, you might see a jellyfish, you might see a dolphin come up there, but you're not going to see the crustaceans and things on the bottom of the seafloor like a diver is going to, or have as deep of a encounter with them. And so the deeper you go in consciousness, the deeper, the more likely you're going to have these experiences, these very deep experiences. If you're on the surface paddleboarding, you're going to have an experience. It's not going to be as deep as the guy who's swimming with a great whale, you know, like, and like seeing the whale and holding on to its tail. That experience is going to be totally different because they've gone deeper
Mhm.
into this realm of consciousness.
And so the winners, what did they show in terms of like I know the one with the vision, I heard that story, but I haven't heard the other ones with the
Yeah.
so what was the winner in like in say in telekinesis? What did people see?
So in telekinesis, I had to develop an app, a software program, and that program worked in conjunction with this thing called the Egley wheel, which has been around for a very long time. It uses biofield energy and your ability to direct that energy to turn this wheel one way or the other.
Okay.
Now, we have the skeptics and the naysayers. That's great. It's cool. You know, it's
Yeah.
unfortunate that they don't know what they're talking about. A lot of them, some of them do, but the majority of them have never used the Egley wheel, so they don't know how it works.
Yeah.
They just come up with magic ideas on how it works. So people say, "Oh, it's the heat from your hand." Oh, it's the static electricity. Okay, got it. Are those possibilities? Maybe, but the reality is that the software asked you to make the wheel turn or do things at an undetermined time that was determined by the software. So maybe I can put my hands in static electricity will make it turn counterclockwise, but when the software says now stop it and make it turn clockwise, you can't use static electricity as an
Yeah.
example to say, oh, well, just at the time that this program
Yeah.
asked me to make it turn clockwise, and then I made it turn clockwise, that was just random static electricity. You know, it's not that way.
Yeah.
And so that's what they would need to do in order to win. They had to actually stop this, the device, the software would ask them, now you have 2 minutes to make it go counterclockwise. Okay. The person puts their hands there, they're making it go counterclockwise. Okay. And the Egley wheel was inside of a box that had two little hand cutouts that you had to put, and it was clear glass on the top. So it was an enclosed box with the exception of those hand cutouts for you to put your hands in.
Wow.
So to minimize wind. So people who
Yeah.
say, oh, it's just wind blowing it,
Yeah.
um, and to minimize anything that would come from the outside. And so they would have their hands in there and they had to focus their intent to get it to go counterclockwise. And within 2 minutes, it'd say, okay, now stop it and make it go clockwise. And then they had to stop it and make it go counterclockwise. Each time they were able to fulfill one of those requests, then they got 5 points,
Okay.
right? And if they did not fulfill that request in the time allotted, then they would get no points.
Okay.
And so, and if they got it to just move, they would get like 2 points. If they got it to move in the direction requested, they would get 5 points. And if it didn't do anything, then they
Yeah.
got 0 points. And that's how we scored them. It was four different people doing in the individual competitions, and we had a first, second, and third, and then we had the team competition in which we just had a first place winner. And so that was basically how we ran those games. And
And
they
the
can you
winner
could
was pretty good at it. I mean, in terms of what they were able to
yeah
do.
yeah that's so good, relatively speaking, in the sense that they didn't know what the challenge was beforehand,
Yeah, yeah. You hit that. I
right?
remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, and which was part of it too. So people again who are naysaying online, oh, they didn't have any clue. They got up there, and that was the first time they saw
Yeah.
that challenge was when
Yeah.
they were up there doing the challenge. Now next year we're gonna see even better results because we're gonna make it harder, but we're gonna give people a year to train because we're
Okay.
putting out the at the end of this month we're gonna be putting out what the games are for next year. Um, so yeah, we saw some really good results. People got stuff to like really do things and move. It was beautiful. And we had winners. We had winners, and we blew people's mind. Again, we expanded the global consciousness by allowing people, whether you believe in the 100 monkey theory or whatever, allowing people to see average people doing this right then and there, and before their eyes. Not people who were like on the show circuit doing this for like years and years and years, but some of these people had only been doing this for like a year or heard about the side games. They went online because we have an assessment, which I want to get out there too. People are like, oh, so just any random person. No, we actually have. I built this platform called Side Games Online, which you can go to and you can play these games, these online games, but they're meant to assess your psychic ability and help you develop your psychic ability, and it ranks you. So if you could do, let's say, if you can, we have one that's precognition, and if you can get a score of like 50 out of 100, then you're at this, a significant, a statistically significant, deviation from just the average. And so not only are we logging that data, but then you get to see, oh, you're 50%, but this other guy was 40%, and you get to see where you are. And that's how we chose our individuals that we started to talk to. If you scored really high in those games, then we asked you if you wanted to be a part of the side games,
Okay.
and then you came there. So there's a whole thing. This isn't like, hey, did you get a bubblegum wrapper out of the Cracker Jack box that said, hey, come to the side games? This is
Yeah.
like we're honoring science and research. We're not saying that it doesn't matter. We're saying
Yeah.
no, this does matter. The way we go forward is to not just do that. We also have to make it available and reasonable for the average person, and that's the connection there. So we can make it fun. And if we can meet kids where they're at, if kids are gaming, to say, put the game down and come to this conference and listen to a lecture for an hour and a half about remote viewing, they're going to be like, I don't want to do it. Okay, well, if you're into games, here's what we're going to do: play side games online, have fun,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know, see how high you can get. They'll say, oh, this is exciting.
Yeah.
And then as they become older, they'll say, oh, I really want to know what I'm doing here. Oh, okay. Sit in one of these lectures with us.
Yeah.
And now you can learn a little bit deeper. But you meet people where they are. You don't try to force them to be what you want them to be.
Yeah.
And and then if you embrace them where they are, then maybe what we'll see is that eventually they will grow to a level that we didn't expect. And for all of us who are parents, I mean, my child is 8 months old. I used to have a stepdaughter, so I do know what it's like to raise somebody from, childhood to adult. Or I still have a stepdaughter, but we just haven't been in communication that much.
Mhm.
Um, you see that you can't force things on people, but what you can do is you can set conditions for them to have the best experience that they can have, and then they will grow into the next evolution of maybe that experience on their own.
Yeah.
And
You
so,
mentioned children, and children are really good at it. People don't
yes,
realize that they're because the left brain hasn't come online yet, so they're
yeah,
still very right-brained, and
Yep.
they can do it. And you run martial arts studios, and I think you train the kids. One of the things I proposed was to get a like almost like a football game where you set up the guidelines and the obstacle course. I don't know if you've seen the Vibravision. They have the kids in Utah where they're going through the obstacle courses and they're shooting guns at targets and drawing and counting money and stuff like that. And I had actually proposed similar to you, except I never got it going, was to run a children's Olympics where you're like
Hmm.
the Vibravision puts up the U.S. team or whoever, because the Australians actually have a team. They actually have uniforms, and these kids all go through the obstacle course. And if you had the same obstacle course around the world, you could get these kids, and they're really good at it. And then I asked them just recently, I asked for to do another interview, and none of the kids would come. They wouldn't volunteer to come online because one of the kids I'd done a couple of interviews with this kid who's 13, who's really good at this thing. And the video went out there, and all his friends found out about it, and he was ridiculed. And now
Hmm.
none of the other kids want to come forward with this thing. But you're true that it is this where if it's a game with kids, they don't even think about it, and
Hmm.
it becomes like how fast can you go through the obstacle course, and who's the best at this. So you train your kids all the time in on this blindfold thing in the martial arts.
Yeah, so I train with the Vibravision guys. I've
Oh, you
trained to
do?
their level
Okay.
3, and then their hub system, which is called Merpati Putti, which is what's Vibravision is a subsystem of that. I train with them in that as well. And so done that, but my martial arts, ninjutsu, my main martial arts, the one I've studied for 25 years now, is the ninja had these abilities as part of their tradition. And so we still work these abilities. We call it instinct or gut training.
Yeah.
And we do that almost every class so that they feel sensitivity. We have an intention and a receiving and sending game where you guys may have seen this before, but you have a person stand and they got their eyes closed and you're trying to either push them forward or pull them backwards with your energy. And then we develop that to pushing from the left side or pushing from the right side. So then eventually, as you get higher and more advanced, you can have four sides. So one person is learning on how to feel energy that's in their environment. The other person is trying to learn how to send intention and energy in a way. And so we're both learning how to control our energy and the energies in the room. So we do stuff like that. We do the blindfolded stuff. I've introduced now the Eggley wheel as well. And so all of those things are parts of the things that we do at our school. And when people ask me, I'm writing a book right now that has been pouring out of me as a part of the inspiration of this whole dynamic with the Psy Games. It's writing itself just like the Psy Games has been developing itself. And I'm addressing the question that people say, well, why do I need this? Again, how do we make this real? That's the real question. The question is, why would I read a research paper about some guy who is able to influence a little random number generator? And now you prove that I can make a little blip go up like that. Like,
Yeah.
who cares?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like I'm dealing with real life stuff, dude. I gotta like pay for my student loan bills, right? So like nobody cares about the little blip thing on the screen. And I don't want to read 5 pages about that nonsense, so it's not real. So the way I propose it in my book is I say, well, if I were to take your eyesight away, would you say that that was a pretty significant thing? You would really miss that because you really need your eyes to thrive in this world. They'd say yes. If I was to take your hearing away, how would that feel to you? Do you think you really need that? They'd say yes. If I was when COVID happened and people were losing their taste and their smell, did that suck for people who had that experience? They say, yeah, it sucked a lot. I couldn't taste the food that I was eating. I couldn't smell anything. It was horrible. Okay. So what then if I told you that those senses are a order of magnitude lower than what you truly have when you embody who you really are? That you only see but a small spectrum, small portion of the spectrum of the world. You only hear a small portion of the spectrum of the world. You only smell a small portion. What if I was to say I can enhance all of those things, or you can enhance all of those things and use those at a level or order of magnitudes greater than where they are now? Do you see why that would be invaluable? Most people right off the bat say,
Yeah.
Holy crap. Yes, I do. You know, but that's because I made it real to them. They get it now.
Yeah.
But if I was to just say, do you see why being able to make this thing on the screen go bloop is important? They'd be like, nah.
Yeah.
But do you see that that symbolizes how connected and interconnected we are in the world? And when you feel certain ways around certain people, it's probably not because you just randomly feel that way. It's probably something that goes very deep. And there's training out there to help you understand what that is. That's interesting. You
Yeah.
know, when I went to executive protection bodyguard school and I graduated from that, we had to go run through classes about how to feel when energy changes in the room. Because
Wow.
that could be a person who's wanting to attack the person that you're defending. So
Yeah.
you had to be perceptive about people's body language, about their energies and things of that nature. And then once we understood why that was important, then everybody wanted to learn it because that made you a
Yeah.
really good bodyguard, you know? And so they made it real to us. But if they just said that off the bat, we'd be like, yeah, I don't need that. But once we recognize that it would improve our ability to do our job to the point where we get hired by some really high level, celebrity or person,
Yeah.
then oh, now okay, it's real to me now. So now I really want to take part in it and understand what's the depth of it. And so yeah.
Where is the Vibravision place in Utah? Because Cindy's actually moving to outside of Salt Lake City, so she likes training. So maybe she'll go for some training.
Yeah, so Vibravision is in Ogden, Utah.
Oh, okay.
They're about an hour away, and actually there are several of the senior instructors. One being my friend, and he was at the Sci Games. His name is Marcel. He lives in Salt Lake City,
So I'm going to
and
be in
so
Salt Lake City. So you can
yeah,
put me in touch with him.
yep, I sure
Marcel?
can. Yeah, and they can train you and get you training. But Utah is amazing. Like there's so many cool things happening in Utah. Paul Smith is in Utah. He's in Cedar City, Utah, teaching remote viewing. And Paul was a part of the original remote viewing program. So
Yeah.
he's out there. And there's several other groups that are out in that area that are doing different things that have to do with psi abilities.
Oh,
Something's magical about Utah. Not to mention that they have all of the other UAP activity
The
there, and
Skinwalker, yeah.
yeah, Skinwalker Ranch. So it's all types of stuff
Yeah,
happening in Utah.
that's the thing is like people say we haven't made any progress, and I say, well, yeah, we actually have because I've been at 50 years. You can say Area 51, and everybody goes, yeah, I know what that is. And you can say Skinwalker Ranch, yeah, I know what that is. You can go to China, they know what that is. And you realize that we are making some headway, like near-death experiences and psi abilities. And my last question, because I don't want to keep you forever, it deals with people who would see Dahlia perform. And she's done two demonstrations for me, one with four blindfolds on. And I mean, you see that apparently she got a standing ovation and the place just sort of went crazy. So are you having more people next year, a bigger venue in next year? And can you talk about Dahlia and what she did at the Sci Games? Oh,
he's frozen.
oh no. This is the main question here. Oh no. Have you got a question you want to go with here when he gets back?
Well, I want to know, is it same time next year and early August? Um,
Yeah. Because it's in a different city next year, but
oh, is it?
yeah, and
You
I'm assuming they're gonna have a bigger venue in
maybe
terms
they
of,
can come to Utah if Utah's got all this stuff going on.
it's no, it's still on the East Coast. Here he is
He's
back.
back.
Oh, there we
Yeah.
go.
Yay, back.
Okay, so talk about Dahlia, and then Cindy wanted to know about the event for next year, where it's going to be held, a bigger venue, what's going to happen there for next year, a little hint for people that might want to get involved.
Oh my God, I think
Yeah.
you should come to Utah if Utah's got all this stuff. I could be of assistance.
Yeah, one day I was just actually as I was saying that maybe it was me picking up on what you were thinking, but um, so Dahlia did amazing. I brought Dahlia to do a demonstration with me at Contact in the Desert this year. I had a panel and I wanted her on it, so we did that whole thing. She blew people away, and then we did the side games and she competed and she again blew people away. I mean, she had two different types of games. One, we had this pegboard and it had these different color pegs on it, like red, yellow, and then we had 24 donut shaped wooden donuts. And they were all different, they were colors that matched the pegs. And so you had to, while she was blindfolded, dig into this box with all these colored donuts, pick out one, and then put it on the proper color peg. And she got 100 for 100. So she got 100%. So 24 for 24, which was 100%. Then we did this distance game where you had the blindfold on and we would move. We started at 8 feet and then we would hold up a color and you had to tell us what the color was. And almost as soon as we were pulling out the color, she was, saying what color it was.
Wow.
And every time she got it right, we would move an additional 4 feet and we'd do it again until we ran out of stage. The stage was 36 feet long. So then we decided to, because everybody was already out of their seat and just awe and amazement. And so we were just like, okay, well, let's keep going. So we went off the stage into the crowd, held it up. She's still getting it. People going crazy. So then we go to the back wall to where there isn't any more room, which is about 60 feet away from her. 60 feet, 60. And just in case, so nobody gets my words mixed up, 60 feet away from where she was standing at. And then at the time, a gentleman was helping me. His name is JB. He said, what if we did two colors at the same time? And so we're whispering this as people are cheering and going crazy. And I'm like, well, she already won the game, so let's just go for it. And the worst that could happen is that out of the 10 we've just done, she gets one wrong, and it's the hardest one because we hold two up. Yeah. So then, Jimmy Church counts down 1, 2, 3. We hold up two colors, and as fast as a cowboy shooting two targets, she yells them out, blue, green, and it was just, and the crowd goes nuts. They're just like standing up, roaring, cheering. And it's amazing. And even with that, guess what? Online, people are like, she was faking. She's looking around the mask. Why is her head turned sideways? Blah, 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 blah. Again, like people just don't understand.
Well, that's the left brain coming, because I the second one I used my grandson's cards, the cards with the circles and the different animals and stuff, and she would never have seen those. So I did them, and then I said to my son and my daughter-in-law, I said, hey, I used Kaiser's cards for this blindfold, and they sat there and watched the whole video, and they went, wow, and they're watching this, and she's doing all the cards and stuff like that, and then they said, that's interesting, and then my daughter-in-law looks at me, and the left brain comes online, and she goes, maybe she was peeking, and it's like, 4 blindfolds, but that's the left brain always wants to come up with the alternate explanation, because it's the skeptic, and so that's the thing. And I guess the last question would be her daughter. Her daughter did a little demonstration at your side games as well.
Yes, yeah. So Lidu did do a demonstration. She is amazing, that young lady, and it was beautiful. She had somebody randomly would pick a card from a deck, and then her mom would look at it, and then Lidu would say what it was and what the card said on it. And then at one point, we had a lady come up from the crowd, and she wrote, just something that anybody would know, but something that was from her mind on this card. And then her mom looked at it, and Lidu was able to say what it was. And it was, what color is the sun? So she answered the question. She didn't actually write down what the question. So she just put yellow. And without seeing the car, without knowing what it was. So that was great. And then I had a funny discussion. You say left brain. So I had a researcher come to me later on that night and was like, it was amazing. He was like, I ran the numbers, and it was like 1 in quadrillion that she would have gotten this thing right, and that Dahlia would have got all these right. And so I didn't believe it when I looked it up on Google. So then I did a chat GPT, and it said the same thing, and I didn't believe it. So then I went to Grok. So I'm looking at this researcher. He's literally telling me this. He's like, I went to Google, it said 1 in something quadrillion, and he didn't believe it. So then he goes to chat GPT. It says 1 in something quadrillion, so he doesn't believe it. So then he goes to Grok, And I'm like, okay. So, and he's like, I just couldn't wrap my head around it. Even though I believe in this stuff and I'm a researcher, he was like, but then I feel like there was a lack of disclosure. I said, what do you mean? He was like, well, you didn't tell anybody her daughter was telepathic. So maybe she was receiving the information from her daughter telepathically. I said, you know what? This is the first ever Psy Games. It's not a laboratory experiment. And I said, I'm very proud of what happened. He said, yeah, but it wasn't so clean and this, that, and other. I was like, why I'm really proud? He's like, what? I was like, because we're not debating on whether or not psi abilities exist. We're just debating about whether it was telepathic or she saw through the blindfold. I'll take that. Let's go.
Yeah.
I was
Using one unexplained to explain another unexplained.
yes. I'm like, okay, if you don't want to believe Google, Grok, and Chat GPT, I think we've done enough today. Um, so we sold out this year, as like you were saying at the beginning, and it brought a lot. This event brought a lot of people to tears. It changed. I cried. So many people cried throughout the weekend because it was just changing people's lives in an order of magnitude that no one expected, including myself. And to see the download come to fruition, and then to see the people respond to it in a way that
Mhm.
it was meant to make people respond, viscerally making it real to them in their lives, not just another research paper. And so we had a lot of people writing us and asking us for tickets. So next year we're going to do it in Charlotte, North Carolina, because it's that airport is super easy to get to from, in the country or out of the country,
Yeah.
nationally or internationally. And we found a hotel there that can house almost 12,000, 1,200 people. And
Okay.
this year we were a little over 600 people.
Yeah.
So we believe that we'll definitely get to 1,200 people. It's going to be awesome. And then we're just going to keep growing it from there. Again, this isn't about the competition. It's competition just makes it fun. It's one of the things that we understand. When Bannister ran the 4 minute mile, he broke that. And up until then, people thought it was impossible. Then people started, it changed the resonance of the people, and they started to recognize, okay, let's try this. And other people started beating it. When we crossed the English Channel, when the person who did
Yeah.
that, before then, nobody thought it. The last person who did it, when that first person did it, they went from it can't be done to that person did it in 24 hours. The last person who crossed the English Channel by swimming did it in 6 hours.
Wow.
So we went from disbelief, can't be done, no
Yeah.
one could ever do it,
Yeah.
to doing it in 24 hours, to now 6 hours.
Yeah.
So what this set, that's what the side games is here. This kind of fun, playful competitiveness, which you've seen in tribes throughout generations who
Yeah.
use this not to hate each other, not
Yeah.
to hate within the tribe. It was like, oh no, it's going to improve our physicality, our ability
Yeah.
to communicate with each other, our playfulness. It's going to get out our energy. We're going to have a good time. So it wasn't meant about like, I'm better than you, you suck. It was like, how can we raise up the whole tribe? That's the same thing we're looking at here, and we're going to see that change.
And I talked to Dahlia, and they'll have to watch the video. I won't tell what Dahlia said, but I asked her whether she got offers after people saw, and she did. And I was just blown away by some of the offers that she got. So did you get any offers from Hollywood or something? Because to me, this looks like a game show thing, like a reality type show that
Mhm.
that could really take off in terms of really moving the needle. Did you people
Yeah.
come up and propose things to you?
Not yet. There's talk out there, but nothing concrete. And, I would love that. I would love that, not because I want to sell out or anything weird. No, because my mission is to get as many people in the world to
Yeah.
realize and recognize that
Yeah.
this is real. And there's no better avenue or no better way to do that. And Kai Dickens showed that with the telepathy tapes.
Exactly.
When you talk to Dr. Diane Powell, she'll tell you like she lost her license for a while. She was fighting this major uphill battle. She's been working in this field for all these years, and nobody knew who she was but a few people. Unless you got the book ESP Enigma and you were into this type
Yeah.
of stuff, you didn't know who Dr. Diane Powell was.
Yeah.
But millions of people know who she is now. because of the telepathy tapes. The millions of people know about telepathy because of the telepathy tapes. That's what we need for the psi phenomenon in general. And to have a year after year event where we're doing this and we're pushing the envelope, that's what I want to do. So I want to make this like the esports
Yeah.
of psi ability, where we can bring researchers, where we can bring lecturers, and those who can do together under one roof, so we can explore all of the different capabilities and how to bring those to the next level. And I think if, well, depending on what you believe out there, for me, I think, you know, that might be what our friends, these NHI, are waiting for.
Yeah.
Hard to have a real conversation when you have to just try to prove to that person you're having a conversation with that you exist, right?
Yeah.
So like they're like, okay, like, yeah, but I'm not sure, which was my experience. This thing is talking to me in Gateway program, and I'm like, okay, I got to be objective about my subjective experience, you know. But it's hard to have that real deep conversation about how we can change the world and how we can do things. But I think that when we get to a certain level, and we realize what our true divine potential is, and we start to actualize that into the world, that we will see some major shifts
Yeah.
in our encounters with NHI, and how we're able to not just be a bystander all the time, but actually really engage and not have to wait for the intermediary of the government to be like, oh yeah, this is real.
Exactly. Well, thanks for following your dream and your vision. I mean, I talked to Kai Dickens before she was famous. I interviewed her, and I said as the interview started, I said, I've been in this for 50 years. This is the most important interview I'll ever give. This is the biggest thing I've ever seen in 50 years of studying the paranormal in terms of the shift, where it's almost like the shift has happened. And I think you're part of that shift. You and Kai Dickens have turned this ball and started moving it down the field. And I'm pretty optimistic that we're actually going to get somewhere. So thank you. I mean, you even look at the way history has worked. We're in the West. We want everything yesterday. And if you take a look, I remember Hillary Clinton talked about the fact that women's right to vote started in 1848 with the Fox sisters, who had the knockings with the spirituality
Hmm.
stuff started. They started the right for women to vote. Women didn't get to vote till 1920, and everybody saw that just happened. No, it took 80 years. And I think the same thing here. We've been working on this thing for 80 years, the UFO thing, and suddenly to me it appears like the thing has shifted, and everybody's starting to realize it's more than UFOs. It's what you and Kai Dickens are doing. So thank you so much for following your dream and running with this thing, because a lot of people would have walked away when it got tough, and maybe because of your military background, you knew that you had to, that sometimes when they put you out for you're telling the story about they do this to you, and they make you move all your bed stuff out onto the court and then put it back in, and then make you do push-ups and then go on a big run and stuff, that you knew that you're used to stress and pain, that you've got to almost like, when you're lifting weights, you don't get muscular until you go through the strain of lifting weights. There's always a pain factor in terms of getting there. So I so much appreciate having been able to talk to you,
Yeah,
because you and Kai Dickens are the two biggest stories I've seen in 50 years.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
exciting.
100%.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And Cindy, I'm sure will try to help you as wherever she can, because she's an activator, and likes to get in the background. She's actually helping a conference this weekend, next coming weekend. So Cindy's a bundle of energy, and if you can use her for anything, I'm sure she's willing to jump in there and help.
Yeah, I'll connect with you via email, Hakeem.
Okay, awesome. Awesome.
Beautiful. So thanks for your time. We'll let you go because you probably got some classes to run and some more things to solve, and keep going. And I will keep following you and promoting your work, because it is extremely important.
It is.
Thank you guys. I really appreciate it. And
Namaste.
one way you could do it is right now we have early bird registration for the Psy Games for next
There you
year,
go.
with $220 off of your ticket if you were to go to our website and sign up today. So
Beautiful.
What's the
and
website?
the website is PsiGamesInternational.com. So PSI Games International.com.
Beautiful. Beautiful. And you're still going to do the 5 categories, or you haven't really looked at that?
Yes, this year we're thinking about replacing dowsing with telepathy.
Oh, wow. Okay. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's I asked Kai Dickens whether she'd gone. She said no, she was doing filming and stuff like, but I'm sure because there's different camps now. There's Diane Paul's camp, and then there's Kai Dickens camp, and there's all these different. I didn't realize there's all these different tests. There's tests going on here, there's tests going on there, and all these
Yeah.
kids have come forward. And apparently, from what I understand, like any one of these kids will blow your mind in
Yeah.
terms of what they can do. I mean, they're
Yep.
like, again, 100% effective. And Kai says, well, stop saying 100%. And it's like, well, it's like 100%. And it's like, because you get the whole thing with the remote viewing and stuff where you say, it's 25% chance and they got 32% and it's statistically, significant. And it's like, how about the kids are getting 100%? Like, this is it's just like unbelievable. Like, try to explain that in your little skeptical left brain. Look, thanks so much for joining us, and hopefully we can do this again after next year's event. And I thank Rob Freeman for giving me the contact to you. And Rob and I worked on this again for years. I've done lots of interviews with him and with Wendy, and it looked like it was going nowhere. And then all of a sudden, boom! It just flipped, and suddenly he wins the side game with his team.
Yeah, that's amazing, man. This team is, yeah, they're doing great stuff, man. Great stuff. Oh my
Beautiful.
gosh.
Okay, we'll let you go, and thank you, Cindy, for all that you do for me and for your energy and your assistance. Thanks.
Of course.
Thanks,
Beautiful.
Grant. Thanks,
Namaste.
Cindy. I appreciate you guys.
Namaste.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Okay. Let me get out of this thing here.
So, Grant,